Three. Hello, welcome once again to Pale Blooms and Beyond. Thank you for joining us today. If you do like the programming you see here and the musicians and artists that I visit with, please be sure and hit the like button below and also subscribe to the channel. Ben Schultz, aka Benjamin, is an American rock musician, multi-instrumentalist, composer, and recording and mix engineer who has been active for over 50 years. At age 17, Ben jammed with Jimi Hendrix and also played with Stephen Stills and Buddy Miles, also while only in his teens. Over the years, there were collaborations and associations with artists like James Brown, Freddie King, Robert Plant, John Lennon, and George Harrison, just to name a few. During the 70s, Benjamin would play in a series of bands: Wizard, KGB, a 70s blues rock supergroup, which included Mike Bloomfield, Carmine Appice, and Grech, and the Pipedream and the band Pipedream at the end of the decade. Later, Ben would join Barefoot Servants with John Butcher and Leland Sklar, and eventually form his own band, the Ben Schultz Band. My guest's latest project is the Book of Benjamin, and Benjamin is currently working on putting together the world's greatest garage band. Well, welcome, Ben.
Howdy.
Thank you for taking time out to visit.
It's my pleasure, as everybody must say.
Right.
Anyway, just to clarify something, I didn't join Barefoot Servants. Barefoot Servants was my band.
Okay,
Epic Records came to me and said, Stevie Ray just passed away. You put together a back porch blues band. We'll sign you.
Okay.
That's how that happened.
Okay. Well, take us back to the beginning. Where were you born?
I was born on Broadway in New York City.
Oh, okay.
The upper West Side, very close to Harlem, but it was still Broadway and it was still New York City.
Okay. All right. Well, do you recall your early childhood growing up as far as do you remember hearing music in the household?
Not in the
No.
household. I left when my parents left when I was 3.
Okay.
But I do remember them blowing up Broadway to put in the subway.
Oh, okay.
I remember the dynamite.
Oh, do you? Even at that age? Wow.
Even at that age, my memory goes back to about late 2s, early 3s.
Oh, is that right? Is that right? Well, where were you off to after that? Where did you guys move?
My dad became the first physician in a small town called Ruskin, Florida, which is south of Tampa, right in the midst between Tampa and Bradenton.
Okay.
And Ruskin, Florida was the Ruskin corn, Ruskin tomatoes. They're an agricultural town.
Okay.
Very famous tomatoes and very famous corn.
Okay.
And that's where I went to elementary school and high school, and really started my musical chops there because Ybor City wasn't too far away. They were in Tampa, and Ybor City was, R&B, Latino, Cubano, and soul music, and that's really where I cut my teeth on music.
Okay. Well, when you first moved there, when you were younger, do you remember what did your first memories of hearing music?
Telstar.
Oh, okay. Tornadoes. Yeah. Yes.
Telstar Ventures, Al Hurt, Dixie Jazz. I played trumpet. I started on piano at 3. I started trumpet at 5, guitar at 6, drums at 7.
Wow. Okay.
I was in the elementary school band, high school band.
Which was the easiest to learn, and which was the hardest instrument to learn?
None of them. It just, I had this thing. I don't know. Guitar is probably the hardest because you got to think in 3 directions.
Okay. All right. Did you have were you self-taught or did you have lessons? Yeah.
Trumpet lessons, piano lessons, and then after a stint of college at University of South Florida, I went to Berklee College of Music and New England Conservatory. And I also studied, well, in Berklee, I did 4 years and 2. Then I did 2 years and 1 at New England Conservatory, and then did private study with George Russell, who was working with Sun Ra and Miles Davis. And that was the Lydian chromatic concept, and that was real heavy theory. And we were jamming on Stravinsky's Rites of Spring, and then my brain blew up.
It would after that. It
Yeah.
would. Well, can you remember going back a little, your first 45 or album that you got?
That was first 45. That was probably Wizard. I
Okay.
think it was God Love. I was 17 and there was a high school band called the Tribesmen,
Okay.
and that morphed into a band called Brother, which morphed into a band called Wizard.
Okay. Okay.
And we were, playing all over Tampa. There was another band that was originally the Tropics, and those were the days where we had competition. We try to friendly blow each other off the stage.
Right. Who was
And
who was the first big name act that you went to see in concert?
uh, what was it? I think it was Peter and Gordon, The Who,
Really?
and the Beach Boys.
Oh, okay. I've heard the last two. I haven't heard Peter and Gordon come up very much doing these at all.
Yeah, they opened, just the two
Okay.
of them,
Uh-huh.
and then The Who, and
Yeah.
then the Beach Boys followed The Who. So
Okay. What
that
a
was,
pairing or a trio. Yeah. That's
oh,
good.
back those shows back then, they used to do triple billing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like I think the Hendrix show was what was it? I think it was Ozzy. Maybe no, it wasn't Ozzy, and it wasn't the Monkees. Um, I forgot who opened for Jimmy, but it was so just it wasn't the Monkees, but it wasn't something you would expect opening for
With
Jimmy.
Jimmy. Yeah. Well, talk about, speaking of Jimmy, talk about jamming with him.
Well, there was a thing called the Men's Garden Club, which was a big empty field out by Tampa International, and every Saturday there was a jam. And my best friend, Michael Braun, made Jimmy's clothes.
Oh,
And I had been working for Michael out of high school. And, I was playing in other bands around, another band which eventually became Leonard Skinner. But,
oh, okay.
Michael said, I was staying at his house and he says, come on, we're going out. And he goes, pull in here. And it was a no-tell motel. And he brings me into the bar and Jimmy's sitting there. And he introduces me to Jimmy. And, there was no jamming there. So we just said hello and goodbye. And then I was hanging out at the Men's Garden Club and Jimmy shows up. And I guess I was a familiar face because I felt his hand on my shoulder. And I turn around, it's Jimmy. He goes, and he just does this. And we're playing, and wherever his acid took him, we went. And
Yes.
some of the best and worst blues you'd ever want to hear.
Is that right?
Yeah. There was a newspaper article in one of the Tampa papers about it, but I didn't get mentioned and nobody took any pictures. We didn't have cameras back then.
Right, right. Yeah.
So, I mean, I have no pictures with Buddy. I have no pictures with anybody.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I was going to ask you next about Buddy. Yeah.
Yeah, Buddy, I was down in Criteria working
Mhm.
in Miami, and I'm close friends with Dwayne Hitchings and Mike Panera from Blues Image and Cactus. I grew up with Mike.
Blues Image.
Joe Lala, who eventually Stephen Stills, and we had our crew. I'll back up. There was
Sure.
a park off of Florida Avenue in Tampa where we'd all jam. That's where I met Dwayne Allman. It was a real community. In fact, my band Brother, which turned into Wizard, used to open for the Allman Brothers, and Dwayne gave me my first Coruscant bottle and kind of said, "Go like this."
Oh, did he? Did he?
Yeah, that's how I started Slide.
Yeah.
Just watching him, and we did a few gigs with them, so I got well entrenched into that thing.
Yeah.
There was a band called Captain Beyond, which was
Yes.
Gary
Got that.
Reinhardt,
Right.
who had been in Iron Butterfly with Mike.
Yeah.
Or before that, I don't know the timeline, but the
Yeah.
singer in that band became the singer in Pipedream,
Right. Willie D. Yeah.
Willie
Yeah.
D. And,
Right.
yeah, but anyway, where were we?
Uh,
I mean, there's so many tributaries to my career. It's really gets convoluted, even
well,
in
that's
my head.
well, that's okay. We'll try to piece them together and try to
Yeah.
try to make some.
Oh yeah, my first single.
Yeah,
So it was
yeah,
Wizard,
yeah.
the radio promotion guy from Decca Records saw us, and actually Atlantic Records had heard of us and sent us a contract. My dad decided to play Perry Mason, and that didn't go very well with me.
That didn't go
So,
well.
so we got this other contract and ended up recording at Lefevre Studios. They're a very famous gospel group, but their family had a studio in Macon, and that's where we cut the original Wizard album.
Okay, okay.
And then it started to get some airplay, where we ended up playing Goose Lake Pop Festival that summer, which was in front of 675,000 people.
Okay. All right.
And the local press said the top three bands were Chicago Wizard and Mountain. And that was over a 3-day real pop festival with real acts. So
Yes.
that was a blessing. And then Bob decided we needed to put out a 45. So we wrote one, and it was called Got Love.
That was the one. Okay, okay. Well, is this before I think this must have been before Wizard. A Quest?
Uh, no, this is Wizard.
Oh, it is.
The
Message in a
Quest
Bottle?
stuff was the Quest stuff with Panera. That was something that I did solo. Mike Panera
Oh,
helped me with that,
okay.
and Mac Emmerman from Criteria mixed it. My first
Oh,
mental,
that
kind
was
of my first taste of sitting behind a real desk and watching somebody.
okay. Because I
And
found that on a
Mac founded Criteria Studios.
okay, that Message in a Bottle was on a various artist collection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was before Wizard yet. You're
Oh,
right.
okay, that was okay. A little
Yeah.
bit before. Okay, all right. Well, you with Wizard, there was a full album in
Yep.
'71. You, Paul Forney on bass, and Chris Lunn or Loon, Chris
Loon.
Loon. Okay, on
Yeah.
drums.
Right.
What do you recall of the album itself?
Uh, I wish I knew more about production back then and stuff, because it was the sounds on it are incredible. I mean, some of my guitar tracks are out of tune, but
Yeah.
I mean, little things. I I don't think I would have messed with it much differently, except making sure some of the things were corrected.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm actually um, I'm actually going to take it apart and redo it and mix it in Atmos and stuff like
Oh,
that.
are you? Okay. Well,
Yeah, planning on doing that with everything I've ever been on.
okay. Well, that would be welcome, I'm sure, for fans and everyone. Yeah.
As long as I don't get sued.
To do some remastering and
No,
things like
I've learned how to, out of necessity, I've learned how to master. You
yeah,
know, because
yeah,
I've used some of the major mastering houses these days, and they're not like the old school guys that I'm used to.
right, right.
No offense, guys. But
Yeah,
thanks for showing me what you can do, because you made me better.
there you go. It's unfortunate that we don't know everything we need to know. It takes time and learning and going through that process, like you said about the production. If you knew that up front, but
Yeah.
you have to learn, you have to grow and just like the honing your chops. You don't start playing just without doing that.
Well,
So
there's that
yeah,
10,000 hour
yes,
axiom.
yeah.
It's actually more like 1,000,000 hours.
All right, right,
I
yeah,
mean, I still play 2 to 3 hours a day.
yeah, yeah. Well,
And my hands hurt.
I imagine they do. Plenty of blisters over the years, huh?
No,
No,
once you
no.
callus out, you never get
Okay,
blisters.
you don't even pay
Yeah,
attention.
once you get to the callus stage, no,
It's all
uh,
right.
they don't get sore anymore.
They don't get sore. Well. I'm moving on to KGB. Now I have to say that's an iconic. Both of the albums that I've seen, the one and the first one in Motion, really have the iconic covers on those. It's some that when you're record hunting, they come up quite a bit,
Oh
and
yeah.
yeah, I like that. It looks more British to me. Looks like
Oh,
they're more of an English band than American.
oh,
Just
like maybe so.
yeah.
Back then I did not, I knew Barry through Buddy, but
Yeah.
I did not understand the Chicago blues scene
Okay.
and
Okay.
how important Barry Goldberg, who just passed away, may he rest in peace,
Right.
how really important Barry was to the scene, along with Mike Bloomfield. I really didn't understand that, although everybody says I sound like Mike Bloomfield naturally. That
Yeah,
was one of the first, and I was never, I wasn't a real Bloomfield fan because he played frenetically,
yeah, yeah,
at least to me. Now I get it,
yeah.
and I was never a big fan of Fender twin tones. Sorry, Fender. I liked the super reverbs. I liked a little bit more bluesy stuff. I didn't like the harsh stuff.
The
But
heart. Yeah,
so, that band was formed to be a song band. Think about Ray Kennedy,
yeah,
who,
yeah,
wrote Sail on Sailor with Brian Wilson, Barry Goldberg, famous songwriter, Grapevine, that kind of stuff. And um, and Mike Bloomfield. They were supposed to be a song band. They were getting Barry and Mike back together. And they brought in Rick Grech and Carmine.
yeah.
Now, Carmine had just come out of just come off before Rod Stewart come off BBA, Beck,
Okay.
Bogert, and Appice.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
there's your British thing. Rick Grech was the British thing because
yeah,
he was Blind Faith.
yeah.
Now, Rick started getting high again, and that's what drove Bloomfield away.
Okay, okay,
Rick did not, Mike did not want to be around junk again,
okay, okay,
and Barry too. I mean that those days were gone.
okay.
So I had been working with Carmine. I've always been around Timmy and Carmine, Tim Bogert, and
Yeah,
he rest in peace, and Carmine, because they were very influential in my career. Because I always liked Vanilla Fudge, I love Cactus,
yes, yes, yes.
and Beck Bogert and Appice. Just
There you go.
Pipe Dream was Beck Bogert and Appice, with real vocals. That band was designed to be.
Yeah,
Uh, but anyway, back to KGB. Uh, I had written some songs, and then I went to England to what was no, I had written some songs, and Carmine got a deal with them, a solo deal on Epic. And that's where I got to play with Max Middleton and for Dean White and Jimmy Haslip, and work with John Alcock, who had produced The Who and Thin Lizzy. Boys Are Back in Town, his biggest
yeah,
hit.
yes.
And so there was always that English influence, but Carmine put my name into the hat for KGB.
Oh, is that how that happened? Okay,
Yeah, and he got me the gig.
okay. And Mike, after Mike had left,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, Mike had split because they recorded the album with Jay Graydon and then shipped the tapes up to Mike.
okay, all right. And
Yeah,
then again, like in the intro, you played on the '76 album "Motion."
yeah,
What do you,
yeah, yeah. You were talking about the cover.
yeah, yes.
Yeah, yeah. We go on the MCA back lot where they do shoot all the Universal TV shows and movies, and they go, "See that tower over there? Climb it."
Oh, did they? Did they?
And we're 40 feet up, and they go, "There's a stunt bag at the bottom. You're not going to get hurt, but don't look down."
Yeah, and jump,
And
and just
jump
let go, and let go.
and just jump. Yeah. So, and then the goof is that the four of us jumped down and Barry's looking up.
Yes, and
But,
you go and look at it. Yeah,
that was out of the blue.
yeah.
The cover, when
I'm
they really did album covers,
yeah, yeah.
it
Right,
was
right. They were. They're
crazy
creative.
stuff, man.
Yeah.
Like the Pipe Dream cover.
Yes, another one.
They
Yeah.
had us out after the Agora fires,
Uh,
and they built these tubes like Star Trek beam me up, Scotty.
yeah.
And we're out there and we're naked. They airbrushed all our parts off, but we're naked. And they filled the tubes up with fog and then shoot the shot. But things are still smoldering. But
Yeah.
and we had to have the fire department there in case we burned the place down.
Luckily,
It's like,
it didn't happen. But yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. But
yeah,
still,
still,
they they pushed the limits back then. They really did.
we had lemos. I mean, it was
Well,
high
you know,
budget stuff. We had fun.
yeah. I was going to say, going back to the cover for Emotion. I'm so afraid of heights. I'm afraid I'd have to leave the band. I
Yeah,
I couldn't do that. I couldn't. Yeah. Yeah.
It was tough. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm somewhat fearless, but
Yeah.
it
Well,
was
you'd have
tough
to
not
be.
to look down. I mean, if you look at me, I'm looking
Right.
down.
Right. And just taking their word for it, they have those bags there.
The stunt bags, yeah, and
Yeah.
none of us had had stunt training, and there was
Yeah.
no stunt guy on
Right.
set
Oh
to
my God.
coach us. We had no stunt coaching, none,
Yeah.
none.
Yeah.
Just cameraman and the art director.
Yeah.
Climb, jump, don't look down.
Or else the label's going to have to pay us a pretty penny to do this. you know.
Oh, that deal was one of the last old-fashioned deals.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, do you the album Motion itself? Do you recall the recording sessions for that one?
Yes, it was somewhat. I don't like speaking not nice about something, but Kerner and Wise who produced Kiss, this was a songwriting band. There was a slight mismatch there now that I know what I know.
Right.
But it was good. We were at Cherokee Studios and it was interesting working with Kenny. Kenny, yeah, I mean with Richie. Richie's nuts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kenny's no longer with us. He passed away. He was working for Music Connection for a long time. But Kenny passed away. But I don't know where Richie is. If you're out there, Richie, I hope you're doing well.
Right.
But you were nuts, man. You were crazy.
I wonder if he's mellowed out any.
No, the last time
No.
I saw him, he was trying to have me work with these like doublemint twin kind of girls, blondes and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
And he was working for this label, and it didn't work out. We couldn't write anything together. It didn't click. But he was crazy.
Well, still crazy
So
after
he was
all.
still crazy,
Yeah.
crazy New Yorker, just right out of Brooklyn, crazy.
Really, like Paul Simon, still crazy after all these years.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the you just mentioned some of the band members in Pipedream, uh, the '79 self-titled album. Willie D, who was in Captain Beyond. Now, drummer, is it Jan Uvena or Jan? Okay,
Jan Uvina. He
Jan.
ended up in Alice Cooper from that gig.
Uh,
But we were looking for a drummer not unlike Carmine because I had this vision in my head. That's another band I put together. Uh, I started, I knew Tim and I knew Tim. In fact, the first time I ever went to LA, backing way up here. And
yeah.
this is back when was in a band called Angel Fire, which is way before, it's after Wizard, before LA
Okay.
and before Buddy Miles. And I had flown out to LA and I stayed at Tim's house and we were talking about doing something then with Mark Stein, but he was still under contract from the BBA thing and couldn't do anything. So I've been wanting to be in a band with Timmy for a long time. And we finally started hanging and playing and I knew Willie and the three of us started working with a bunch of different drummers and somehow I don't know how Jan found out about the gig, but we at Timmy's house and we're auditioning him and it's thundering and lightning, the electricity goes out. I mean it was an epic audition. But he was New York and he played, double kick and he did very reminiscent of Carmine and that pushed him to do what he did, which pushed me to do what I do. And
Right.
yeah, and that's another record like that.
That you
Somehow, even though well,
you
it's
brought.
out in France, there's a French
Yeah.
label that put it back out.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna remix it and
You're
remaster
gonna
it
mix
in
up. Yeah.
stereo and Atmos
You,
and just redo
yeah.
it.
You guys brought out the best in each other. Yeah, dude.
Oh, yeah, it was Beck Bogert and Appice with three-part harmony
Yeah.
because Jan could sing and Timmy could sing, or four-part harmony. And I was trying to sing, and you know,
Yes.
it's
Right. And
but
and for
it was. Oh, there was a Steve Perry tune we covered because
okay.
Steve and Timmy were working together before that, and you know how Steve writes. He writes
Yeah.
for vocals.
Yes.
We
Yes.
covered one of his songs, and it was everything was two and three part because you know Willie and Tim were like a duo. He'd like this,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then Jan could really sing a third part, and I would add the fourth when needed.
Yeah, yeah. Nice to have the harmonies in there. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
Jan,
so but
did Jan play on Inagata Davida? Was he there for that, or what
no,
was?
no, no, he wasn't. No, you're thinking of the wrong band. He was in Alice Cooper.
Okay. Well, this may be a misprint on the internet, but it said he was in Iron Butterfly too. So
Maybe at some point he had joined
yeah,
Panera.
that's why I was wondering. He didn't play
That
on
was
that.
down the road. Panera,
Yeah,
may he rest in peace. He passed
yeah,
away recently as well.
yeah.
But Panera was always working an angle.
Was he? Okay.
Oh, man, yeah. Mike was Mike.
Okay.
Yeah, he taught me a lot, but Mike was an interesting person. Let's just put it that way.
Okay. We'll leave it at that. We'll leave it at
Yeah, I'm not going to get into the not suitable for work stories.
Okay. Yeah, he played. You mentioned Alice Cooper, Jan, but it does say Iron Butterfly, so probably not that
That's
era.
probably the
Okay.
Panera Jan
Al,
connection
okay.
post
Alcatraz
Alice
and
Cooper.
Alcatraz, and also Signal, band Signal too. So not a
Signal, yeah, I vaguely heard of them because Jan and I kind of,
not a big. Not a,
Jan moved back east and
okay.
just kind of,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Went your
we just
different
kind of
ways.
lost touch.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, uh, how did you come into contact with John Butcher and Leland and form Barefoot Servants?
Well, I had my solo album, the
Okay.
Ben Schultz Band with Tim
Okay.
and Ray Brinker, the drummer. Ray was primarily a jazz cat, but he had been playing with John and he was playing with me. And when Epic offered me the deal, I needed a singer. So Ray says, why don't you call John?
Okay.
Um, so I put together, I wrote all this music. John wrote some lyrics, and it took us about a year to get Epic to say yes. And then they said yes, and then we had to make the record. Um, we had contacted a producer, Michael Frondelli, who played the tapes for Leland, and Leland loved, he said he joined the band. He said he wanted to join the band, not just do the sessions, because he dug the bass parts I came up with. Thank you, Leland. But that's how Leland ended up in the band. And then Lee and I just kind of took it over.
Okay.
But it was my band to begin with, even though John had been Grammy nominated. Because of that, the press, the thunder of the press went to him.
Yes.
And
Yes.
we never played live, so nobody could really see who was who.
Okay. Okay.
And that was one of those. We did the Southern Spirit tour, but that was 69 cities in 90 days with 5 bands, and we had 20 minutes of opening, so
Oh,
nobody ever really got to hear us.
okay. You didn't get that much exposure at all doing it.
No, and that was the days of the Spin Doctors, and we weren't 19 and didn't wear flannel, which was a
Yeah.
problem to the label.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
They're going, why are you getting, we had it was either a top 10 or a top 11 single with a bullet for,
Yeah.
for 11 weeks. I think it was top 10 for 11 weeks on the real Billboard Hot
Right.
100. And they
Right.
couldn't figure out why.
Yeah.
And, and Harvey Leeds, God bless you, sir. He was head of media promotion at Sony Epic,
Yeah.
Columbia. And he used to kept going, well, maybe they're good.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The Southern Spirit Tour was Marshall Tucker 38 Special, the Fabulous Thunderbirds, and the Outlaws. And Doug from Marshall Tucker said, why aren't you guys the headliner? You're kicking our butts. You guys should be headlining this. And, that was the problem. We just never got to break through. And politics, record company politics.
Yeah. They're
That's
all
what killed Pipedream. That's what killed a lot of. I've always run up against the record company politics.
right. And that's a common thread doing these interviews. So with just about every artist I talk to.
We were signed to AB. Pipedream was signed to ABC with a 5-year deal.
Yeah.
They knew that it was going to take us 3 albums, just like
Right.
REO Speedwagon, just like
Right.
any of we were going to have to make a record and go tour.
Yes. Yes.
And
Right.
MCA wanted ABC's country catalog and Tom Petty.
Yeah.
And so they bought ABC. and they threw everybody's record but the country catalog and Tom Petty in the trash. The way I found out that we had been let go was a friend of mine in MCA called me up and said, "You need some records? Come get them. They're in the dumpster."
Oh, is that how? Oh,
Yeah, that's how I found out.
yeah, yeah. Wow, wow.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm going to keep my mouth shut.
Okay. Well, you guys were not grunge. So, like you said, with the flannel and
You
all
know,
that.
that was Barefoot.
Yeah,
This was Pipedream.
yeah,
This
yeah.
was right when
Right.
Journey came out, Journey broke out, and
Yeah, 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 exactly.
and also there was another vocal band that broke out at the same. Oh, and Van Halen came out.
Okay. Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so we were up against Van Halen,
Yeah.
and Eddie was just miles beyond me. But I was playing a combination of Jeff and me. I'm an amalgam of Jimmy Page, Jimi Hendrix. There's a review out there that said if BB King, Jimi Hendrix, Jimmy Page, and Eddie Van Halen had a train wreck, you get
Yeah, in fact, I have a BB King reference coming up, so
okay.
I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that. Well, but the '94 album, Barefoot Servants, got some pretty good ratings, you know?
Yeah, like I said, we had a top 10 single for 11
Yeah,
weeks with a bullet, but they
yeah,
wouldn't give us video money.
yeah, yeah.
And that MTV was the thing then.
Right. You had to have a video. I mean, almost.
Yeah, and they made this artsy craftsy video of some chick cutting her toenails, but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, that's thank Harvey went and did it just to get us on MTV.
Right.
Yeah, thank you, Harvey, once again.
That's not a good look for the band though. A girl
No, but at
cutting.
least we got
You got
something on
you got
MTV
right.
because
That,
Epic wasn't going to pay for one.
right, right.
And it got into rotation, and we did get, it was real East Village artsy craftsy stuff, and
Yeah.
Andy Warhol-esque.
Yes.
So at least it was cool.
Yeah, yes, yes. Well, side note here, or I want to hear about some of your works with some of the artists I mentioned in the intro. James Brown. James Brown.
That I was working with Chambers Brothers. I'd met them when I was at Berkeley,
Okay.
and we were jamming. I wasn't in the band, but Lester Chambers, the lead singer, became good friends. And he introduced me to James, and it was just jams and stuff. We're just guys hanging, making music,
Yeah.
which is a lot of what does not happen today.
Yes, yes.
I mean, I got to play with Stevie Ray Vaughan that way. We were in the same studio. He was mixing Crossfire, and he goes, "That your gear?" I go, "Yeah."
Yeah.
Because you want to play? I go, "Yeah."
Yeah. See, and I
Yeah,
like the black artists that cross those barriers, into rock. I mean
yeah.
Sly Stone, Jimmy,
Well,
what you talked
have
about.
you done study on Sly, him being a DJ and Bill Graham and his affiliation and him
Yeah,
producing Jefferson Airplane
yeah,
at the
Jefferson. Yeah.
beginning? I mean,
See,
very few people really know the true story of Sly Stone. They
right,
know
right.
Sly and the Family Stone and then Sly going off the
Yeah,
deep end. But
right.
Sly was a big deal in San Francisco
He
for the
was.
whole scene.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was.
He knew the studio, he knew the board, he knew songs, he knew how to produce.
He was the first big artist to really make it there. There wasn't a scene there before Sly. Before Sly.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he made his scene because he was on the air. He was a DJ on the air. He
Right.
was on the radio every night, so he had that's how Wizard started. Is our manager was a DJ. I can't remember the call sign, but it was a heavy AM radio station,
Right.
and he put Paul and I had done Born on the Wrong Side of Time. Uh, I can't think of the artist. Rory Gallagher, I think.
Oh, Rory.
And there were no drums on it. It was, I had a sound on sound tape machine, quarter inch, and we had just done bass and guitar, no vocals. And Mike Lawrence put it on the air, and the phones lit up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the phones lit up enough consistently for the period of a month. And this must have been May, just before high school graduation, because Beach Week was coming up, that the radio station sponsored us a live gig at Clearwater Beach Auditorium, which holds about 1,500 people. We had 5,000 people.
Oh
We
man,
had people hanging off the
I was
ceiling.
going to say, how did people get in there? How did they?
They just opened the doors after after they made a ton of money. They just said, "Screw it." We just opened the doors and people would wander in and out. But literally, people were stacked up the walls on the ceiling. And back to that other band, which the Tropics, which had become Bacchus by then. Uh, we played for 3 hours, and
Wow.
it was just stellar.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Are there any recordings of that still?
No.
Still? Oh, okay.
No. That was before the days of portable anything.
Yeah.
You'd have to have a remote truck.
Yeah, that's true. Well, Freddie King, what about your
Freddie? Okay, there's a whole period of where I played with the exception of BB King, who was when I forgot the name of the band, but we were touring the clubs up in Cleveland by the lake, and we ended up being the house band. Oh, the band was called Smack, SMAK. It was a band it was a quartet. The keyboard player, Sam Dente, was like a Felix Cavalier clone. He could have been Felix. And we were a house band. And it was the club Euphoria, which was on the corner of Crack and Syringe in Cleveland. And we opened, and BB was the headliner that night. And he saw me play. And he's up there with the big band. This is when he had the horns, and Ike Stubblefield was also 17. Ike and I played later, many years later together, but Ike was playing B3, and there was a pop festival in town, and there was Jeff Beck, Page, with Zepp was in town, and so was Three Dog Night, and they had come to the show to see BB. So BB's playing, and he looks down and he sees me, and he looks up, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, Johnny Winter was in the audience. So he tells a story about how he had met Johnny Winter back in Texas. So he brings Johnny up. And then he looks down and says, ladies and gentlemen, there's another young player here tonight who I just saw. He's really good. Ladies and gentlemen, Ben Schultz. He pulls me up the front of the stage from the audience, takes Lucille off, the real Lucille.
Yeah.
Hands it to me and says, you guys have fun. I'm going to go get a scotch and soda. Bye. So I'm up there with Johnny Winter, who's like, it's like Rocky and Bullwinkle. Johnny kept falling off the stage. I kept grabbing him.
With his guitar, you had his.
No, he's playing, and it's like the Rocky thing that you see in Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Oh yeah.
Where he's on the edge of the cliff and falling, and Bullwinkle grabs him. I mean, this happened 3 or 4 times, but wow.
Yeah, what an experience.
And in the audience was Jeff Beck, Jimmy Page, and Three Dog Night, and I'm 17.
Yeah. Oh man.
This is paying your dues, guys.
Yeah,
that's what the real paying your dues stuff is.
Exactly. Jeff Beck. So what a loss, his passing, but
yeah,
what an innovator on the guitar, man. Wow.
Yeah. And Jeff was shy.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Because it was supposed to be Beck, Bogert, Appice, and Stewart.
Okay.
And then Jeff had a car accident, and Rod and Woody came in and said, we're doing the Faces. Good luck. When it came to the hospital room, which was kind of shitty, but it worked out for everybody.
Yeah. Wow. What a change in fortune that might have been for BBA if Rod had stayed there.
Well, there was the Jeff Beck group with Timmy and Carmine and Rod and Jeff.
Yeah,
they had done some gigs together, so it wasn't that it never happened.
Yeah, that's true. Just not in that incarnation.
Well, it never became BBAS.
Yeah. Well, what about Robert Plant?
Robert, it was right after he broke his leg in Kashmir.
Okay.
And he was in the country on a green card, which is why there's no tapes, because he wasn't supposed to be working at all. But Record Plant 3rd Street, RPLA, Record Plant LA, 3rd Street was my home. I lived there. that's where I really learned how to engineer. And that's where Buddy introduced me to Gary Kellgren, who was Jimmy's engineer. And Jack Douglas was always working there, Lee DiCarlo, Lee Kiefer, um, Andy Johns, Zeppelin,
Age.
Glenn Johns.
Yeah.
It was, there was the Village, there was Sunset Sound, and there was the record plant, and there was Cherokee. And I was there, and Buddy had gone out with Gary and gotten too messed up and didn't show up for the session. So I called the session. We were in Studio C. I had my engineer, Kelly Katera, and Danny Hull, who was the tenor sax player in the band. We were just hanging out, and I'm just walking out to leave, and Robert, all by himself, comes hobbling down the hall, and he's looking very forlorn. And he goes, "Is there a place to play?" And I go, "As a matter of fact, yes. Follow me." So I bring him in the Studio C, and both Kelly and Danny were just, "That's Robert Plant."
Yeah.
And all we had was, back then, was a Maestro drum machine. If you remember those, they had the push buttons.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Yes.
so Robert,
Yeah,
he semi-programs this, what the closest thing he can get to a reggae beat. And he says, "We're doing La Bamba." And for 3 hours, we played twist and shout reggae with just guitar, tenor sax, Robert, and Robert playing harmonica.
I'd like to hear that.
So would I, but
Reggae. Yeah.
because he was in the country on a green
Right.
card. If he had gotten caught working, Zeppelin wouldn't have been able to get back in.
That's
The
right.
tapes,
Right.
next day, tapes gone.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I should have gotten a cassette. I was still in awe of the evening. I didn't get a cassette.
Yeah, I would have been too. I wouldn't have thought of that. No.
I'm sitting there playing, and reggae wasn't my thing then. So this is, I'm walking a tightrope.
Well, and then we have to a couple of ex-Beatles, John Lennon. What was your
There was Jim Keltner, who drummer,
yes.
was always at Record Plant. He wasn't there that night, but because Record Plant was one of the few studios that was open 24/7 with a quarter beer machine. And the Coke machine quarters only with beer. So when the Rainbow, which I think most of your audience would have heard of by now, the Rainbow Bar and Grill on Sunset, when it closed, people came to Record Plant. And it was always an assortment of people coming down on Fridays and Saturday nights. We had Paul Williams. We had, who wrote Wichita Lineman?
What is his name?
Jimmy
Webb. Jimmy Webb.
Yeah, Jimmy Webb would be there. Paul Williams, David Bowie, John Lennon, Keltner. It was a mix and match, and I was always there. So, whoever played, we either sat and watched or we played, and that's how I met. I really didn't get to talk to John. I knew David's ex Angela pretty well. David Bowie's ex, Angela Bowie. But I was around all that.
Yeah.
The George Harrison thing was, he played slide on on 2 tracks on Belinda Carlisle. And I was one of the guitarists on one, and it was me and Mike Landau and George Harrison. And the other one was just me and George Harrison.
Okay. Now I think George is my favorite Beatle.
Well, he said in a Guitar Player magazine interview that his favorite session outside of the Beatles was that song that I played 12 string on.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, with Mike Landau, "Leave a Light On."
Is that right?
Yeah.
Now that's got to make you feel good. Yeah, to hear that. Yeah.
Well, that and $4 won't get me a cup of coffee at Starbucks.
I know. And talking during these interviews, and people, do get royalties or whatever today. It's like, Yeah, I can go out to eat on it or pay a bill here and there, you know.
Yeah, there's a whole thing going on now because I shifted my royalty collection to Europe because they were finding me money America never found. And now I'm kind of at war with the union because they won't release me so I can collect money in Germany.
Okay, you can get it there. There you go. Well, I'm glad you found that
Yeah.
outlet there to do that. Yeah. Well, when did you form your own band, the Ben Schultz Band? When was that?
That was before Barefoot.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah, because I wasn't getting paid full. I was working for this producer for an hourly fee versus getting session fees.
Okay.
And I finally said, I've had enough of this, and I quit. And then the record label went, "Where's your drums? And where's the drums and guitars that were on the demos?" So they called me, and I put them on while they were mixing. But that's when I quit.
Okay.
So I figured the only way that I am going to make a dent and let anybody know who I am was to do a solo album. So I approached it. This was just around the time Steve Vai released Passion and Warfare. And I approached it more from a songwriting point of view with guitar melodies, which is exactly what uh, Lowry, I don't know how to pronounce Basillo. I don't, is it, do you know how to pronounce her name? Are you familiar with her?
No, I'm not.
Oh,
How
you
do you
should.
how do you spell it?
Lari, I believe.
L-A-R-I.
Lari Basillo.
Okay.
She's amazing,
Okay.
but she's doing the same thing that I was doing. She's writing songwriting, only playing melodies on guitars like a singer, and
Okay.
approaching the guitar like a singer. That was my solo album.
Oh, okay. Brazilian guitarist. Okay. Larry.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
she's amazing. And
Okay.
Sklar's on her records.
Oh,
That's how I found out about her.
I'll have to look into that. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
there's a video up. I just saw it on Facebook of her doing her new single. It's amazing. I mean, it reminded me of a Steve Perry song. It's that
Oh,
kind of
is that
songwriting.
good? Okay. Okay.
It's magnificent.
Wow. Okay. She uses Ibanez. Yeah.
Yeah, she uses Ibanez. I mean,
Yeah.
she's got the full package.
Okay.
So
Wow.
I guess being European or being Brazilian and not being an American,
Yeah.
she's got a following. She's got eyeballs on her, which you can't get in America.
No,
I'm
no.
bigger. I'm still bigger in Europe. I mean, I've got 800,000 followers in Europe, and I have 2,000 here.
Yes, yes. Oh, isn't that something? Yeah, yeah. I just talked to the road manager for the Ramones.
Oh,
Oh, yeah. And he talked about how, like in Argentina, how big they were down there, before
yeah.
they were big here.
No,
I,
I'm huge in France and Germany
yeah,
because of
yeah,
Buddy was a huge star in Germany.
yeah, yes,
Huge star.
right,
And so, I wished we'd gotten to tour. We never toured.
right. That would have helped. Yeah, but
That the bane of my so I became the guy behind the glass,
yeah,
became the plumber fixing the
the
stuff.
plumber fixing the leaks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when in your who was in that originally in your band, Ben Schultz Band? Who was?
It was Tim Bogert
Okay.
and Ray Brinker, who
Okay.
became the drummer in Barefoot. He helped
Okay.
form Barefoot.
Okay.
And a singer called Paul Sizemore, who sounded exactly like Paul Rogers.
Oh,
But
okay.
the Ben Schultz band was 75% instrumental and 25% vocals.
Okay.
And we put the band together and we were ready to tour, but no tour money.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was another thing. No
That
tour
hurts.
money from the label.
That hurts. Yeah. That definitely.
Yep.
Does. Yeah. Yeah. It stops you in your tracks. Wow.
Yeah,
So
because
how long were you together then? How long was the band?
it was probably a year because he wanted to extend my contract and the terms were just not right. And I said no. So that's when my manager at the time heard from Harvey Leeds, back to Harvey at Epic,
Yeah.
that they're interested. They didn't like that album, but they liked my playing.
Okay. Okay.
And as I said, excuse me, I'm about to sneeze.
Okay. Bless you. beforehand.
I haven't sneezed yet.
Yeah, but beforehand, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, that stopped the sneeze.
Good.
Yeah, and that's when Stevie Ray had just passed away, who I had written a song, an instrumental song for on my solo record, and I
Yeah.
guess that's what touched them to because I was really doing Stevie. Stevie had
Yeah.
this thing,
Yeah.
and there's a song called Muscle Car on Barefoot Servants, which
Yeah.
I wrote before we got signed, before Barefoot got signed. And it's Stevie.
Yeah.
If you listen to the rhythm guitar, I totally copped Stevie.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And it basically we were Hendrix guys, Billy Gibbons, Stevie,
Yeah.
back. Oh, you had brought up the Freddie King thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, in that band, we were the resident band. If I don't know how many people are familiar with Vickers Oil, they were like Standard Oil, but out of Denver. And one of the sons bought this hotel, and he was turning it into like what has become the Hard Rock today. But this is back in '72. He was trying to do that back then. And we were the house band. And it was kind of like staying at the Overlook in The Shining because there was nobody there. Here's Johnny.
Yeah.
But for the month we were house band, he had booked Freddie King, Howlin' Wolf, Muddy Waters, Max Sann, and that was it. So the first one was Muddy. He was there for 3 days. And after the show was done, he came up to me and said, "Sit down, son." He hands me a guitar and we just start to play. And then all of a sudden he goes, "Frank." He goes, "What do you hear?" I go, "What do you mean?" He starts to play again. So we're both playing and he goes, "Frank." He goes, "What do you hear?" I go, "Explain." He goes, "Listen to the room." And we start playing again. He does that again. And so he's teaching me how to hear the reflections off the room. Because if you listen to Muddy Waters records, there's a lot of room sound on that guitar. Keith Richards is the only other guy I've seen that's picked up on that. And that was day one. Day two, he's teaching me how to project to different seats in the audience. And day three, we just have fun. And then the next day, Freddie King played. He saw me play. He hands me his guitar, which, he's a big guy and he shoulder sling. So the guitar's at my knees. I'm playing like Chuck Berry duck walking with Freddie. But, Freddie taught me that you don't root the blues on the high E string, you root on the B string, which gives you a whole different pattern to work from. Howlin' Wolf just taught me storytelling.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I mean, and Max Sann was just straight out R&B, playing funk.
Yes. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Freddie, another Texan, and then
Yeah.
what's his name? No, you mentioned Howlin' Wolf, not Howlin' Wolf, but
Buddy?
no, Blind Blind Lemon. I mean, he was
Yeah.
from Texas, but there was
Yeah, I
another.
never played with him, but
Other,
for me, there was Sun House, was Blind Lemon. There was a lot of guys that
yeah.
somewhere in my incarnations as a human, I've
Yes.
exposed to stuff.
Yes. Yes.
There's stuff I inherently know that I don't know where I know it from.
Yes.
After almost dying from cancer, there's stuff I knew that I didn't know where I knew it from.
Yeah.
Now, maybe it was recessive, maybe it was a gift. I rather just say it was a gift.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's a nice way.
there's stuff I know I didn't know 10 years ago.
That's a nice way to look at it, I think.
Yeah, I just think it's a gift.
Yeah, you've gotten a new lease on life, you know,
Yeah,
like that. Wow, start looking at it differently. Yeah,
much differently. It's not,
yeah,
I'm just looking to entertain people and share what, paying it forward, share what I've been given.
right, right.
It's not about, it is about the money. It'd be nice to be out on the road
Yeah, but
and,
but
but, as long as people listen and they enjoy it and they smile,
there you go. I mean,
God bless you, man.
that's the root. That's the root for doing it right there.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's why we all did it. We didn't, back then we didn't care about the money. We just wanted to go play. And
that's
well, and also being younger guys, it was the perks of being, a
yes,
guy playing guitar.
right, right. So many, of course, it was a little earlier, it's when they saw the Beatles and all the girls going gaga, that's
Yeah.
what I want to do. That's.
It
So,
was still the Chang and George Harrison that got me. It
yeah,
was not all the screaming girls. I wanted them to be quiet so I could hear what he was doing. That and the drums. I remember the first time we had in high school where this band played at you know at we had like a whatever they call the group, you know, once a month get-togethers in the cafeteria. They had the band the Tribesmen, and they played Louie Louie. I lost my mind.
yes,
I remember Bruce playing drums, and I lost my total mind.
yeah,
I
yeah.
was done. I was hooked.
You're
That just the rhythm thing, the feeling it, just I was done.
you were hooked, yeah,
I
as they
was
say.
toast. Yeah.
So after that, yeah. Well, when did you establish the Kokoro group?
Cook- I studied ninjutsu for years,
Ah,
and
okay.
Kokoro is the Japanese kanji for blade heart, which also means ninja, which means your skills are honed as sharp as a samurai sword, and you know when to cut and draw blood and when not to. And that's how Kokoro came about.
Okay, all right. And is that still you still do?
I'm not incorporated anymore, but I still
Okay,
use it.
okay, still use it. Okay,
Yeah,
all
it's my emails and stuff. Um, it's a bit removed. It's basically my emails, and I still have the Kokoro group as a business, but I branded as about the Benjamin because there were too many Ben Schultzes on Spotify, and then I just decided, after making every mistake you can make and learning how to participate in streaming radio, I rebranded back to my name, which
right,
is what I've used all my life.
right, right. I think it's a wise thing you did that too. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I want to talk about the latest, the Book of Benjamin. Uh, what's it all about, Alfie? As they say.
Yeah,
Remember?
it's about well, it was originally called Chapters,
Okay.
and just different chapters of my life. So I retitled it the Book of Benjamin because it would have chapters, different types of, periods. I was planning with redoing everything like I am, but have them be a different chapter. And that would be within the Book of Benjamin. But now that I've rebranded, I'm just going to put the stuff out as it was. But that's what the Book of Benjamin was about. It was going to go through chronologically. I was going to re-release the Buddy Mile stuff, the Wizard stuff, the Buddy Mile stuff, the KGB stuff, the Pipedream stuff within the Book of Benjamin. I still might. I don't know.
Okay. All right. Well, I wanted to comment on the songs that you sent me.
Oh, the
The
latest
first,
two new singles with
yeah,
Becca
the
and
two,
Mike.
yes, the two singles. Uh, It Hurts Me Too.
Yes.
You definitely do justice to the Elmore James track.
Thank you.
You bring it to life. I have to say, that's the way I
That
would put
that that arrangement was the arrangement we did with Barefoot, but it never had that. It
it.
didn't have that swamp thing.
Yeah. Now
We did. It
that's
wasn't captured properly.
right. Now that's here's the reference I make to BB King. It's almost like BB King on steroids covering Elmore. That's the way.
Wow, thank you. Thank you.
You're
Wow. The hair on my arm just stood up. Thanks.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's the first time I've had that effect on anybody. So, hey,
Okay. It's the makeup, dear.
it's okay. Okay.
Yeah. And my friend Mike Finnegan, who I've known, we became brothers during my time with Stephen Stills, and he and I been through a lot together, and may he rest in peace. But that was probably one of the last things he ever recorded.
Wow. Wow. See,
And
go ahead.
yeah, and I know he did a solo record, but I don't know which he recorded before or after. But it's in the period of his last recordings.
Oh, is it okay? See, and there's Stephen. We didn't talk about that.
Yeah, Stephen,
Another Texas connection.
Yeah, let's stay on
Okay,
this moment. But
sure.
so he sang it, and it turns out, and now we can kind of start segueing into Stephen. When I was working with Stephen, Bonnie Bramlett was in that band.
Yeah, yeah,
So it turns out Becca saw me play when Becca Bramlett,
yeah, yeah.
Delaney and Bonnie's daughter,
Right.
who, by the way, is the best female singer I have ever worked with, ever.
Yes, she's got
She's
great
she
voice. Yeah, yeah.
so she saw me when she was 12.
Oh, did she? That young? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
okay.
then she was working at Cherokee Studios when I was doing the Rod Stewart stuff, and working with the Graces and Greg Alexander. And I didn't know her then. We really, we've been circling each other. Then we started working. When I got to Nashville, I looked her up, and that's when I hit her up to do these two songs.
Yeah,
And and I heard this thing, Mike sang it, and I said, I heard this Delaney and Bonnie background thing, and Mike wasn't real happy until he heard her, and he goes, I never thought you could put a lady on that song. And he goes, that's way cool.
yeah, yeah,
And she brought it. I mean, she did. I heard, she heard it, and she
yeah.
also did the Rain song. I'm a Zeppelin fan.
Yeah,
The Rain song to me
right.
is Stairway to Heaven Part Two. They
Yeah,
missed it.
yes. I
That song is that good, but
It
they
is.
missed it.
I agree. That's one of my favorite Zeppelin songs. It really is.
And they just didn't capture it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And so I started that track
yeah.
one instrument at a time.
Oh, okay, okay,
That was not tracked with a band. That was put together.
okay. Well constructed, I have to say.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And Becca, I just gave it to Becca and turned her loose.
yeah, yeah.
There's no backgrounds on that song on the Zeppelin track. Everything you hear Becca singing is
Yeah,
Becca.
yeah.
She wrote it. She came up with it. And if you ever talk to her, I forgot which background part pays homage to a different band,
Okay,
but there's one, I forgot which part, but she was paying homage to the Chili Peppers, going, give it away, give it away, give it away now.
right.
And she explained it to me. I should have written it down. I did not. But
Yeah,
every background part that she invented was paying homage to one of her favorite bands.
I'll have to go back and re-listen to that again. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I
her
mean,
vocals.
I can, I
Yeah,
can hook you guys up if you ever
yeah.
want to talk to her.
Oh, okay. I might. Yeah, that would be interested to do that. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
because she was in Fleetwood Mac and Fleetwood Zoo,
yes,
and she was, when she was out with Billy Joel, Elton John figured out who she was, and then she ended up singing with Elton John,
yeah,
which not too many people know.
yes, yes.
She,
No,
yeah,
I wasn't aware of that. Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
She told me the story that, she's just getting off stage with Billy, and she hears Elton scream, "Bramlett, you're that Bramlett, get over here."
He wanted her there.
Yeah, and then
He
he
did.
asked Billy for permission, and Billy, as long as you
Okay.
don't wear the same clothes, I don't care.
That's
And
good.
so she told me she shared his tent, which nobody goes in.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So, so
Wow.
she's been blessed. She's a dear friend, and
Did
she
did
needs
did
to
she
go
did she
ahead.
say did she mention to you, like she knew you at age 12, that she never thought that you and her would be working together? Did she?
We've never talked about it in depth. We just basically it's, holy crap, Batman, we've been circling you.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not the first circle. She was on the Belinda Carlisle records I was on.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
went out on tour with Belinda.
Right. Right.
So, it's like there's been many times of us crossing paths until we
Yeah.
finally worked together.
Yeah, you were close many times, and then yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. I should have thought about her when I was putting Barefoot together because her and John would have been amazing.
Oh, right, right.
And then we would have had the background, the harmony thing that band needed because
Yeah.
I'm not a strong enough singer then. I might be now. I don't know. I think the chemo drugs screwed up my throat enough to where I could sing.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
gravelly now to whereas before I wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but I should have
Maybe
reached out to her back then.
maybe kind of a blessing in disguise, huh?
Might be. I mean, there's been
Sure.
some gifts from all the hardships I've been through.
Yes, yes, definitely.
The 2008 real estate debacle and some greedy and, blood family in-laws, not my wife's in-laws, but my ex-wife's in-laws, but some greedy in-laws making me homeless. I mean, 2008, 2010 were pretty rough.
Pretty rough years.
Yeah, 60 to 0 and homeless and
Yeah. What
yeah,
is the saying of what doesn't kill you makes you stronger?
stronger. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there's been at least 1.5 million tunes about that.
Yes, there have.
Yeah, but the stress was enough to give me cancer.
Yeah.
And it,
Well,
yeah,
you've been free of that for how long?
since 2013.
Okay, okay. Well,
Yeah.
continued good bill of health for you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm back.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's one particular treatment drug, a maintenance drug I'm on that it's brought me back 1,000%. I'm back, but I am healthier now than I was 30 years ago.
Okay. Well, that's very good to hear. Very
Thank you.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I want to comment on some other songs that you sent me. Uh, I tend to like, in general, more mellow songs. Just
Mhm.
what I collect and the albums that I get and I listen to. I tend to gravitate towards the more mellow, the ballads. But that's why I like your Cover of the Rain song so well.
Yeah.
But then Barstow Walking.
Yeah,
Another one I really like. Yeah.
Barstow was a movie written by Steve Railsback's brother before he died.
Okay.
Steve played Manson.
Yes, yes,
Shelter.
yes, he did. I remember that. Yes,
Yeah,
he did. Yeah,
and Steve
yeah,
did the movie and I did the music for it, but the movie never really happened. So I took the song back and released it.
yeah, yeah. Oh, that was from okay. That's the
Yeah,
connection.
and that was done on Square Neck. I'm a big Jerry Douglas fan.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And I play I will never have the chops Jerry has. He's John Coltrane on Square Neck. I mean, he did Giant Steps on Square Neck.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
all
but
kinds.
I dig in a little harder. I play more with a rock edge
Yeah,
than bluegrass guys do.
yeah, I think so.
I mean, I play
Another,
mandolin the same way. I play mandolin like Page and John Paul Jones.
yeah, yeah. See, I like it done a little differently like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I like
yeah.
it.
I really like bluegrass. I understand it a lot.
Mm,
And then now being here in Nashville with Kentucky, not too, the high lonesome thing.
yeah,
And I do know Vince Gill,
that's okay.
sweetheart of a guy.
Yeah,
Uh, but the high lonesome sound I really like, but there's just things I inherently don't hear those. I don't phrase that way.
right, right.
I
Yeah,
I think that's an upbringing thing that you have to be here and be in the hills to get that.
okay, okay. I was
Yeah,
just looking.
I came from the Southern thing, Southern Latino Cubano thing
Yes.
with a New York edge.
Oh,
And
that
then
was
and
that.
I lived in England for a while.
How long were you there in
I
England?
was there a year and a half. I ended up in the Small Faces with Steve Marriott for a
Oh,
minute.
did you for a minute? Well, I mean, you've got that, putting a little feather in your cap there with,
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
I play more British because Zeppelin Hendrix and Zeppelin are my home.
Yes. Okay.
And and Jimmy didn't break till he got to England, and I would
That,
say he's more English than he
that's
was
that's
American blues.
that's
He
right.
was, I mean, he was psychedelic, Cream. He was in the Jeff Beck Cream area long before I think they were.
Yes, yes, I think
Yeah.
so too. I agree. Yeah, I was just looking. Vince Gill, he was in Pure Prairie League.
Yes, Vince. Yeah,
Yeah,
Vince is an
yeah.
amazing guitar player.
Yes, yes. I've heard
Amazing.
that too. I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, another one, another mellow one, Multitude.
a multitude.
Yes, I like that one.
It's like multitude.
Exactly. That's why I put that pause in there.
Yeah.
Multitude. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was written as a demo piece for a piece of gear.
Really, really.
Yeah, somebody gave me some gear to beta test, and it was an acoustic pickup,
Yeah,
and I just wrote something that was based on another tune I had written,
yeah.
but it's actually a very famous Beatles song that I stole it from.
Oh, that's why it sounds familiar. It
Yeah,
does.
okay. I'll give it up.
Okay.
It's Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds in a minor key.
I'm going to go back and listen to that again. Yeah.
Yeah, because
With
that's what
that
I was
record,
singing in my head when I was playing it.
with that, you know how the
Yeah,
song
it's like
we
da ba da da picture
yeah,
the skies and the da da da
yeah,
da. Da.
right.
That's where I got it.
Yeah,
And back to Stephen Stills.
yeah.
Stephen was in Studio A. I was in Studio B with Buddy, and Stephen Chocolate Perry was the bass player, but Chocolate was living in Miami. So Stephen had seen me play with Buddy, and he also knew me from I was putting Pipedream together at the time too. Yeah, no, we were recording Pipedream, not Buddy. No, first time was with Buddy. Second time was with Pipedream. Uh, so he said, "Hey, you're not getting near a guitar. Play bass." And what he taught me about the bass, because of the Cubano and Latino clave, of where the one falls in different places on different instruments. If you listen to the first Crosby, Stills and Nash record, listen to Stephen play bass.
Oh,
He taught me that, which came in handy with me playing bass before, which attracted Leland, I think, because what Stephen taught me allowed me to play bass differently than a guitar player playing bass.
I get you. I get you. Yeah,
And then listen to the Latino clave where it repeats, it repeats, it repeats, it doesn't change. There's a thing if the cowbell's going dun 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 dun, it never changes, because if it changes, it's going to throw the other 15 people doing
yeah.
their clave off.
Oh,
You can't riff
yeah.
if you're doing clave.
Oh, okay. That's very interesting hearing those inner workings like that,
Yeah,
different instruments. How somebody can be taught something on guitar through the bass or vice versa. Things
yeah,
like
and I learned when I went to Berkeley, if you're writing a melody and you play the bass note, you'll hear the harmony. And
oh,
that's the key to a good melody,
right. Okay.
because the melody will predict the harmony
Melody. Yeah. Well,
with the root note. You'll
yeah,
hear harmony.
yeah.
And
To me it's all about the melody. If a
yeah,
song doesn't have
yeah,
a melody, I can't really listen to it. It's got
because that's the way my rhythm playing. I play guitar with inside voicings like a piano player.
yeah, yeah,
I'm not a strummer. I
yeah,
play voicings,
yeah,
which dictates what singers do.
yeah. Well, here's a driving rocker I like. The Song of 13 Postures. I
Ah,
really like that lead guitar lick in that one. I like that.
that I don't know where I came up with that. I was noodling around when I was writing my solo album,
Yeah.
and it started off in a different incarnation where I had Lukather doing Sammy Davis Jr. on the beginning, talking about the meaning of life, and the meaning of life is to boogie. Uh, I pulled that off because it's a little dated, but I had Luke doing Sammy, and he was so funny. Steve Lukather as
Yes, yes,
guitarist from Toto.
yes.
So Steve was a huge Sammy Davis Jr. fan, is Sammy Davis Jr. fan, and he used to do Sammy impeccably. And Luke can do Michael Jackson. He's a real good impressionist, and he would crack us up. And so I figured out, I would ask him like a child, what's the meaning of life? And he went, the meaning of life, my son, is to boogie. Only Sammy Davis Jr. And that would intro the song. But it didn't work for what I was doing now, so I pulled it off. I still have it. I may just release it as a piece someday and embarrass him some more. But the Song of 13 Postures was a movement piece that I had written, which was like, I was thinking Jeff Beck, how would Jeff handle the melodies and things like that? I didn't have the dexterity then that I do now, or understand how Jeff, I heard, was a violin player, so that's where his phrasing came from. And his mastery of the whammy bar to do vocal inflections taken me a few years. I think I'm 10% closer than I was, but I've learned how to do things I wish I knew back then. But it was this piece that eventually turned into a boogie, and Tim Bogert was the bass player, and Greg Bissonette was the drummer, and so was Ray Brinker. I have two drummers on that, and that track was an adventure.
Yeah, I can hear that. I can hear that. Well, speaking of Jeff Beck, Jizz Whiz, nice guitar workout, and that's of course.
I wrote the melody to that. I didn't claim it, but because Jeff, that was a jam piece they had.
Yeah.
And there's like 50 different versions of it.
Yeah.
There's one with Max, there's one with BBA, Max Middleton. That song's been around a while. That riff, that 11/8 riff, I think it is. That's been around a while. But I wrote the melodies to that version.
Yeah. And then finally,
it didn't have any. I mean, it was just a jam piece.
Okay, you got the melodies in there. Okay. Yeah. And then one final one, Crack the Sky. I like the heavy drums in this one.
I went after Phil Collins tune.
Okay.
And also, if you remember Ron Wood and Rod Stewart with Round the Plymouth.
Yeah. Yes.
That's Crack the Sky.
Okay. Now to me, that sounds like that could have been a Hendrix song.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm giving away my trade secrets of how I write. What's the saying? Amateurs borrow, professionals steal.
Yeah.
Well, there's a story. I think it's true, but Phil Collins' Sussudio is he loved Beat It so much. That's his version.
Oh, okay. Right.
He went after he went after cloning it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing why we say professional steal is by the time we're done, you have no idea where we stole it from.
Right.
But we are stealing.
That's not a far stretch to see that Sussudio.
But the amateurs, exactly where they got it from.
Yeah.
By the time we're done, our personalities come into it so heavy, you don't know where we got it.
Yeah.
It's like go back to Multitude. You'll never, in a million years, you never would have thought that was Lucy in the Sky.
Yeah, right. It baffles me to think throughout the history of music or popular music how songs or chords have not been repeated over and over again because there's only how many chords?
Oh no, they have. I mean, there was that period in the 80s, and it's still going on to where it's 6 minor 4 1 5 6 or 4 6 minor 1 5 or 5 4 1 6 minor. And don't you remember that mashup of one year of all the top 10 country hits, and they just put each melody on the same track?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the chord changes and the rhythms and the bass lines and the drum parts were all the same. Different melodies, different words.
Yeah. Oh,
Oh,
and some of those like those big dance hits of the 80s that what Stock Aikman and Waterman or Stock Aikman, yeah. I mean, they had that formula that worked, and they worked with so many different bands, and it's the same, like you said, it's repetitious. It's
well,
got that same backbeat, and things like, yeah,
there's a thing called psychoacoustics, and it's actually a psychological process. John Bonham
yeah,
really discovered this, that if you play the beat long enough, you will hear that beat. Back to the riff rock bands of the 70s.
yeah,
You played the riff long enough, you could go off and do whatever you wanted. Your listeners were hearing the riff.
yeah,
That's why Bonham would play the thing, and then he would stand up and go, "Hi, I'm John Bonham, the drummer. Here I am." And he stopped playing that, but you would still hear that funk, that boom, fuck, boom. You'd hear it, even though
yeah,
he wasn't playing it. And
yeah,
Page was the same way. He'd play the riff, Free, Bad Company, all those bands.
yeah.
Once the brain gets hypnotized by the phrase, it doesn't forget and keeps hearing it phantomly.
Yes, yes, I believe that. I do believe
And
that.
that's Psychoacoustics 101.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'll I'll have to enroll in that, maybe 102
Yeah,
or
you
201.
just start watching people's body language when music happens.
Yeah,
You'll
yeah,
start seeing it work.
yeah. Well, one more thing before we
Okay.
wrap it up is I don't think we talked about this before we started recording. Was the world's greatest garage band assembling?
Ah,
Yeah.
well,
What is the progress so far?
getting in touch with people's managers. It's the same principle of every press called supergroup I've ever been in. It's always with major A-list players, and it's kind of who I want to play with, as an artist, because what it's the same philosophy that we used to use. You know, the first record that back in the day you did a cover song so people would understand your sound was something they knew. I'm that way with players. I like working with people who've got their gigs, they've got their persona, they've got their fan base, and it's not strictly because of the fan base, but it's because they are great talents unto
Right,
themselves.
right.
And I kind of like the integrator. Like, okay, we pick one from this place and one from that place, and one from over here, and then my thing, and put this together, and we squeeze them in a box, and I know what it's going to sound like, and it's going to be great.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's. And I spent the past year and a half really thinking about who I want in this band. And I've spoken to some of the people, and they've agreed, and
yeah,
some are aware, and two of them I can't get in touch with their management.
yeah. All right. Well, Benjamin,
Sir.
uh,
Yeah.
it's
Ben
been
will do.
it's been very very enjoyable.
Yes, it
Uh,
has. Thank you.
and I thank you for your time and going back in that time machine with me. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, and
Well,
Back to the Future or
future to
however
the
you go.
back.
Future to the back. Yeah,
Yeah.
there we
Uh,
go. All right.
hopefully your viewers will, be inspired and learn something from that, or dig further into the things that they're curious about.
That's what it's about right there, exactly. And I do find I get a lot of comments doing these, and people coming out of the woodwork sometimes, that you never
Well,
would have realized. Younger people too. So yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Well, if
yeah.
anybody has any questions, and you can edit this out if you want, my website is
No,
aboutthebenjaminhq.com.
no. I like for you to plug that. Your
Yes.
website and anything else.
It's about the Benjamin HQ, one word,
Okay.
.com. And you can reach out to me. Anybody who wants to learn, I'd be glad to share some trade secrets if you ask me right.
Right. Yes. Hey,
If I know you know what you're talking about,
hey, hey,
I'll
look.
teach you.
Hey, look, and I'm an example right here. He will respond. Yes, he's
Yes,
right.
I will.
He did.
It's
He did.
I've been given so many gifts.
Yeah.
If I don't pass them on, they're gonna
See,
die
see,
with me.
That's what it's about right there. I think you hit the nail on the head.
It's like that's why I think that when people saw stuff in me and taught me, they knew that I would pass it on. The passing of the torch thing. I'll be releasing all the old stuff I had out, like the song 13 Postures. I'm going to remix it and remaster it again and do it in Atmos. It's all going to be coming back out.
Okay.
I pulled everything down. There was like 12 songs that were out. I pulled everything down. Now that I've got some better gear and more knowledge, I'm going to revamp them and re-release them. I'm now with TuneCore, not Ditto, and changed back to Ben Schultz. So everything's coming back out.
Okay. Well, good deal. Good to hear.
Yeah.
Stuff to look forward to.
I'll send it as it comes out. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, please do. Please
And
do.
you can plug if you'll plug it, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, will do, Ben.
Yeah,
All
man,
right.
thanks. Thank you.